It's time, Cougar Nation. Cougar Tracks. The best season analysis with BYU insider Mitch Harper on KSL News Radio and on video every day on the YouTube page for KSL Sports.
Welcome into Cougar Tracks here on the KSL Sports YouTube and KSL News Radio, your legacy home of the Cougars. I am your BYU insider, Mitch Harper. It's a Monday, December 15th edition of the program. 10 days away until Christmas, 12 days away until BYU football is back in action against Georgia Tech in the Pop-Tarts Bowl, and 1 week away until BYU takes off for Orlando to get ready for the nationally ranked Yellow Jackets. And that game in about 12 days will cap off the 2025 season. It'll begin the countdown to 2026. And when that season in 26 arrives and BYU takes on its rival, it'll have a different look, that rivalry game between the Cougs and the Utes, and that's our top story of the day.
The top story of the day. The biggest story in the world of BYU sports right here on Cougar Tracks.
Kyle Whittingham has officially stepped down as the head coach at the University of Utah. That was announced on Friday night, and then 1 day later, Utah made it official. Morgan Scalley, who's long been the coach in waiting at Utah, is now the next head man for the Utes. And BYU and Utah have one of the great rivalries in the Big 12 and nationally in all of college football. And it begs the question, what will the rivalry be like now with Kalani and Scalley? And both men, I think, have a really good relationship with one another. Kalani, of course, was once a defensive coordinator under Kyle Whittingham, and Morgan Scalley was a position coach on Kalani's defensive staff. They worked together from 2007 to 2014. I think it adds a interesting element to the rivalry where not only have they worked together, because Kalani did that with Whittingham, but it's like they were on the front lines together. You know, it's different dynamic between head coach and position coach, coordinator with their position coaches. That's a different relationship. It's a little bit closer at times because head coaches get pulled in so many different directions. So I think there's going to be a healthy relationship between these two. Look, the competition's going to be fierce. The recruiting battles, I think, will be excellent in the state because I think Scalley could potentially take it to a little bit higher level for Utah on recruiting. I think a little bit of the uncertainty with Kyle Whittingham and when was he actually going to move on left a little bit of things in doubt. And then BYU's rise in the Big 12 and their commitments financially and their on-field success. BYU just put together a top 25 recruiting class. I think the battles in the recruiting trail are going to be really heated going forward between these two. But I think ultimately there will be a lot of respect between Kalani and Scalley. And, you know, Kalani Sitake is always going to give a ton of respect to his opponents. That's what he's all about. Even when BYU fans despise the Utes, Kalani talks about loving and learning and respecting them and taking an approach of not wanting ill to their rivals and just hoping they do well when they're not facing BYU. I think Scalley will probably be similar, where I'd be surprised if he's not uttering the letters BYU like Kyle Whittingham. Maybe he will. Maybe he'll do that. I don't know. But I think that there'll be a healthy relationship. I think this will be a very intense on-field and off-the-field competition, but again, a mutual respect. And it's two head coaches leading their alma maters. Scalley's the first Utah head coach that's an alum of Utah since Tom Lovat in 1974 to 1976, the early years when Lavelle Edwards was getting things going at BYU. That was the head coach at Utah at that time. And Kalani, of course, is the first BYU alum coaching at BYU since Floyd Millett in 1942 during World War II. So different dynamic where you got two guys that are entrenched and basically embody their respective programs. And I think that's a fantastic dynamic to all of this that makes it even more fun because these are two guys that know how their respective programs operate and tick. And I can't wait to see the battles between these two. And within the Big 12 and trying to get the upper hand, BYU's got the upper hand right now. 3 games in a row, they've won. They got the upper hand in recruiting. They got to keep it going now. And that's the challenge in front of Kalani with the new extension that he's received to take it to an even higher level. And it's interesting with all the change now with Kyle Whittingham officially moved on, which I'm fascinated to see what his next move is. Because not mentioning the word retirement and saying, I'm going to spend more time with my grandkids, my wife, left the door open to possibly be a coach again in 2026 or wherever it may be. But with Whittingham's exit at Utah, Kalani Sitake is now the longest tenured head coach in the Big 12. And when you dig even deeper, Kalani is the only coach at his current program that was hired in the 2010s. Kalani's been the head coach at BYU since 2016. Everyone else was hired 2020 or later. It's weird to think because I still look at Kalani as still somewhat young. And he is young. He's still a young guy. But he's now the elder statesman in the Big 12 Conference. Here's the top 5 of longest tenured Big 12 coaches as of right now for the 2026 season. Number 1, Kalani Sitake, hired his first season 2016. Dave Aranda, Baylor, 2020. That guy's on the ultimate hot seat going into next year, and he's the second longest tenured. 3, Kansas coach Lance Leipold since 2021. Sonny Dykes at TCU since 2022. That was his first season. Remember, he took the Horned Frogs to the national championship that season. Number 5, Joey McGuire, 2022 at Texas Tech. To round out the top 10, Kenny Dillingham, Arizona State, Scott Satterfield, Cincinnati, Coach Prime at Colorado, Willie Fritz at Houston. He was hired in 2024. And then 10, Brett Brennan at Arizona, also 2024. If you factored in Rich Rodriguez's first 7 years at West Virginia, he still would be behind Kalani Sitake. Rich Rod in his second stint with the Mountaineers. Technically, I guess that would be year 8 this past season, year 9 coming up for Rich Rod, but still, it's a completely different job than what it was in the early 2000s. And Scott Frost, his first stint at UCF, he spent 2 years with the Knights. This past season was year 3. So Kalani is the veteran coach in the Big 12 Conference. And that's what I like, too, about Kalani locking down a long-term extension. Kalani has the chance now to be one of the faces of college football and one of the voices of college football because he's getting up there in terms of age, in terms of years, being at a program. There's a respect to that. And you look at the success that he's creating, it gives him the chance to, build something like Lavelle did and maybe take it to a higher level and have that respect in the coaching community like Lavelle did as well. Kalani is one of the most respected guys in coaching. You go to the Big 12 meetings and all the coaches speak glowingly of Kalani Sitake, but now his voice takes on greater significance because he's the veteran coach in the conference. Maybe he hasn't been a power conference coach for the longest period of time. There's obviously guys in this league that have done it longer, but Kalani is the veteran coach in this conference at his respective program, and that's pretty cool. The new coaches in the Big 12 in 2026, Eric Morris at Oklahoma State. He replaces Mike Gundy. Jimmy Rogers at Iowa State. He replaces Matt Campbell, who takes off for Penn State. Colin Klein at K-State, former great Kansas State quarterback. He replaces Chris Kleinman. And then, of course, Morgan Scalley replacing Kyle Whittingham. Unique times in coaching. It's not for long, it seems like, anymore. If you can get more than 7 years out of a coach, you're beating the odds. The pressure, the high stakes. It is a demanding place. It is a demanding job. And Kalani, he's faced those demands. And BYU's better than most, but still, Kalani's navigated a lot. And I'm curious to see what this next chapter for him and in this BYU-Utah rivalry looks like going forward with him at the helm and at Morgan Scalley at Utah. Let's take a break. We'll get to some BYU basketball talk around the corner here on Cougar Tracks, and it's powered by KSL Sports. Welcome back into Cougar Tracks here on the KSL Sports YouTube page. Mitch Harper here with you. Every day, Cougar Tracks is daily giving you the latest conversation around BYU sports, football, basketball. We hit the main sports and everything in between here on Cougar Tracks, which is daily on the KSL Sports YouTube audio podcast and KSL News Radio. So a transfer portal update, a third BYU football player over the weekend announced his intentions to enter the transfer portal. The latest being offensive tackle Jake Griffin, 6'5", 305-pound offensive tackle. He announced that he will be entering the portal. He's primarily been a reserve offensive tackle, been on a lot of two deeps at the offensive tackle position, but just really hasn't played. He noted at the end of it, I also want to thank Kalani Sitake for believing in me and for the leadership, guidance, and culture he has created. I'm thankful for the people, experiences, and lessons that have helped shape me during my time here. You know, Griffin was a pretty noteworthy commitment when he committed to BYU in the class of 2020. Yes, class of 2020. When he signed, Jeff Grimes was the offensive coordinator. Eric Mateos was the offensive line coach. Jeff Grimes is now at Wisconsin. He's been a few different spots in between. He's been at Baylor. He's been at Kansas. He's now at Wisconsin. Mateos has been around the block too. Baylor, Arkansas, now at Wisconsin again. Maybe he'll land a spot with Wisconsin potentially. We'll see. Because those guys really were high on Jake Griffin. It ultimately just didn't work out. You know, and you look at maybe project going ahead to 2026, you got Gentry still in the mix for BYU. And I've talked a lot about Andrew Williams and Ethan Thomason. Those are kind of the tackles of the future. And then also Bot Molitalo. I mean, if I'm putting together that top four for BYU's offensive tackles next year, that would be my four. If all those guys are healthy, that's my top four at the offensive tackle position next year. That's what I would go to. So could be a little bit of a case of reading between the lines. And look, when you're 6'5", 305 and still got a lot of potential, I think Griffin does, and he's a little bit older, there's going to be a landing spot potentially for him. There's three players so far that have declared their intentions to go into the portal. LaMason Waller, Dominique McKenzie, both wide receivers, and now Jake Griffin. As you heard last week on the show, Fesi Sitake, wide receiver coach for BYU, noted that Waller and McKenzie were given the opportunity to stay through the bowl game. They didn't want to. They're moving forward and getting a head start on the portal activity, which makes a lot of sense. It's kind of awkward to say, hey, I'm going portaling and stay around the team and do that. It's kind of odd. I would get a head start of the portal as well. Jake Griffin announcing that he is going portaling got me thinking. I was looking at his recruiting class, which again was the class of 2020. A lot has changed from that time to now for BYU. Remember, 2020, this was before COVID when this class was signed, sealed, delivered. It was the lowest rated recruiting class in the Kalani Sitake era. In 2020, this class was rated number 81 overall in the 24/7 Sports rankings. And I got to say, people can knock the recruiting rankings a lot, and they do. But more times than not, these people get it right. I'm looking at this 2020 recruiting class. This class just did not hit at all. And you kind of like piece together the story and the timeline of how everything played out for BYU football. Think about the early years in the Big 12. This would have been the group, ideally, that gets you ready for the first year of the Big 12. Remember, 2020, you don't even have the invite to the Big 12 yet. That's not even a thought in anyone's mind. The pandemic's not even a thought in anyone's mind. So a lot's changed. But in a perfect world, this would have been a class that is the heart and soul of year one in the Big 12. Remember, 2023, you go to a huge influx of transfers. Took a little bit of time to kind of get things rolling. That was a 5-7 year, and ever since, BYU's been off and running back-to-back 11-win seasons. I looked at the 2020 class. There really was not many hits at all. There will be 3 players remaining, assuming these guys stay part of the program for 2026 and beyond. That's Bodie Schoonover, Preston Rex, and Ace Kafusi. Ace Kafusi still has 2 years remaining of eligibility. Preston Rex 1, Bodie Schoonover 1 as well. The guys that graduated from BYU, John Nelson, Cody Epps, Micah Harper, Jacques Wilson, Christopher Jackson. And keep in mind, Micah Harper, he went on to go to Montana. He's been playing this year for the Grizz. Cody Epps went to Western Kentucky, but then didn't, I think, play this season. I think he retired from football. Jacques Wilson, he went portaling, but graduated. Christopher Jackson had a moment in the portal, then left and came back. Kind of a weird deal. And then you go through the rest of it, and it's a lot of guys. Jake Griffin, P.D. Tuipulotu, Koa Eldridge, Miles Davis. That was kind of a miss. BYU could have used him. He's done a nice job at Utah State. Ty Burke, Devin Downing, Luve Helu, Josh Larson, Soljay Mayava, Drayson Havea, Logan Peely, Isaiah Tupou, Dean Jones, Alex Muti, Josh Wilson, Bruce Garrett. Remember Bruce Garrett? There was a lot of buzz about him. He didn't even make it out of fall camp. Tuipulotu Lai, Devontae Henry Cole as a transfer, Terrence Fall, Tate Romney. I could go on and on, but that was basically a missed class. Really a missed class. It's the only class so far, and the ones that are more recent just hasn't had the chance to produce this yet, but it's the one class that hasn't produced an NFL guy. 2016, 17, 18, and 19 for Kalani Sitake all produced at least one NFL guy. 2020 was kind of a miss, a big miss, unless Schoonover, Ace Kafusi, Rex do something really big in the years to come. This might be an entire class without an NFL guy. And that's pretty crazy, because usually there's always going to be at least one. Always going to be one. But that 2020 class was kind of a miss, and the recruiting rankings projected that. Again, lowest rated class in the Kalani era, but things have changed significantly. 81 in 2020, 2026, they're now number 21, and they got a top 25 recruiting class, and the top guy in that mix is Ryder Lyons, who over the weekend, he had his final game as a high school football player. Folsom High won the state title, defeating Cathedral Catholic in the 1AA California High School Championship game. But Ryder really didn't play. He played a little bit, basically a few handoffs, a kneel down. He's dealing with a shoulder injury. And keep in mind, too, he's been a gritty competitor this whole year. He was dealing with a high ankle injury that he suffered earlier in the season. But Ryder really didn't play, and Folsom still took down Cathedral Catholic for the 1AA title in California. But what was of note, the quarterback that replaced Ryder in that game, class of 2027 quarterback Brody Rudnicki, big-time signal caller. He accounted for 6 touchdowns, 4 on the ground, 2 through the air. He's LDS. He's a guy that got an offer from BYU last year at camp, was a quarterback MVP. You look at the 2027 cycle, and that's going to heat up here in the next, right now, honestly, but it'll continue to heat up in the springtime. He is a name that BYU has to make an absolute priority at the quarterback position for the 2027 class. He should be their number one quarterback on the board. 3-star recruit, but would it shock me if he climbs the rankings and becomes a bigger high-profile recruit, because that was an excellent performance for Folsom High. So one Folsom guy leaves, goes to BYU. He's going to be serving a mission. That's Ryder Lyons. Maybe they can get another one in Brody Rudnicki. But Ryder Lyons, elite high school career, one of the all-time great players in Northern California history in the prep ranks, earned another Gatorade Player of the Year honor for the state of California for the class of this year, 2025. Lyons is big time. Cannot wait to see what his future holds at BYU. You just look at sheer arm talent. Ryder Lyons is special. He's going to be a big-time player for BYU in the future. Let's take our final break. On the other side, we'll get to BYU basketball as the Cougars are riding high after another dominant performance over the weekend. We'll talk about it next here on Cougar Tracks. Welcome back into Cougar Tracks here on KSL News Radio. Mitch Harper with you. BYU basketball remains in the top 10 of the AP Top 25. They continue to hold steady at number 10 in the AP Top 25. The Cougs are 9-1 overall this season. One of the best 10-game starts really in the last 15 years of BYU basketball. You go back to that Jimmer Fredette team, his senior year, they started 10-0. There's been two other teams that have started 9-1. That's one of these teams right here, 2025, 2026. Cougs got a huge blowout victory over UC Riverside over the weekend, 100-53. AJ Dybantsa was sensational. 26 points, 8 rebounds, 7 assists, I believe 5 steals. I mean, AJ was everywhere for BYU. And what was amazing to me about that was AJ, it wasn't forcing the issue. He gets 26 points, 17 shots. He's got an incredible ability to always get to the foul line, and 4 of 9 from the charity stripe. He's going to want to improve that number because that was a missed opportunity to get an easy 30. But AJ, it's just effortless what he does. And it's just truly remarkable. And sometimes I think the opponent, you just think, oh, anyone can do this against this type of team. No, that's not the case. AJ was excellent, and even Kevin Young highlighted that in the postgame of don't just forget how remarkable he is when he gets these consistent 20-plus point nights and fills up the stat sheet and impacts everything around him. That is not easy to do. And I thought AJ was just sensational for BYU in that game. And he's only getting better, too. I think that's exciting, and I think the way that he's bringing this team together, AJ is a special, special talent. I mean, we all knew that, but he's living up to every bit the hype that he was being placed upon him. That's challenging to be someone that goes to a program that's not used to having number 1 recruits. But Kevin Young is used to being around the world's best. And that pairing of AJ and Kevin Young has worked excellent, and John Linehan, morning shots. I mean, AJ is just putting in work, man, and you can see it, the way that he continues to get better, even since the Villanova game. He is just becoming even more efficient. I can't wait to see what he's going to look like in Big 12 play every single night. But to dominate a team by 47, that is huge. It helps the predictive ratings, those margin of victories. It was just a solid night for BYU all around. And I thought what was also promising for BYU as well was their bench. Alexei Kostic, I thought, had a really nice game. 15 points off the bench, all of which came from three-pointers, 5 of 8 from 3. And you're not going to expect him to score 15 points every night. But he's clearly taking on the role left behind from Dawson Baker, being a guy that can be a little bit of a microwave where he comes off the bench and he can get you a bucket. Now, it's a little bit different way he goes about it. Dawson had great handle, could get to the rim. Kostic, I think, is going to be more of a three-point shooter type guy. But Baker, his absence was pretty big for this team. It was. And so you need to replace that and get some confidence going for this second unit during this stretch that's a little bit lighter on the schedule before Big 12 play. And for Kostic to have that night, it's what Kevin Young always talks about, proof of concepts. Kostic gave you that with a proof of concept that, hey, when he gets the volume, when he gets the shots, the opportunities, he's going to knock him down. And look, he's shown it over the summer, or after he signed and arrived on campus. This guy's an excellent shooter. And keep in mind, it was a little bit later arrival compared to AJ and Xavier Staten. AJ's been around campus since last April. It's taken a little bit more time for Kostic. So getting him settled in. Really nice performance for Alexei. And then Hadim Boop, 12 points, 10 boards. I'm not expecting 12 points really often at all from Boop, but his energy, it's going to create opportunities to get some double-doubles. And it's a nice luxury, too, for BYU to have Boop, potentially being a guy that could give you some quality minutes at the 5 spot for this team. He's probably more a 4. I mean, that's what he even said. He's always been a 4 in his career, but if need be, he will play the 5 and he will give you valuable minutes. I like, too, that Kevin Young noted that they wanted to get some more run with Kostic at the 2, with AJ at the 1. It's a good tandem because, again, when you're around AJ, he will find you. You got to be a guy that can knock down shots. And Kostic, if you can consistently knock down shots, you're going to get a roll every single night and get consistent minutes. And when you look at the minute distribution, Kostic gets 22 minutes. Maras, he only had 6 minutes. And he was kind of looked upon to be the guy to be that knockdown three-point shooter. I don't want to give up completely on Maras, but 0 of 2 from 3, and really his first minutes didn't come until late in the second half when the game was completely out of reach. So curious to see if his opportunities increase in these last 3 home games in non-conference and get more of an opportunity. But AJ, elite, a special, incredible player. The things that AJ does too, even just like his defensive stance, the way that when he's picking up a guy after they pass the logo at the Marriott Center, just the width, the size, the length that teams have to go through when he's locking them up defensively. It's impressive. And he is a do-it-all guy, and anyone that thinks that guy can't be the number 1 pick, because it really does feel like what Kevin Young was saying, that people just nationally have kind of, I don't want to say forgotten about him because he's always talked about, but it's almost like Darren Peterson, Boozer, they're 1 and 2. And AJ is probably more 3. Now, I think this guy, we're looking at the number 1 pick in the NBA draft. And look, I'm seeing BYU much more and up close and in person, but he is just getting better and better. And we got to start having the conversation about him being in this National Player of the Year race too. KenPom.com's got AJ in the top 5 for that National Player of the Year race, but through non-conference play, AJ clearly doing enough to be in the mix for that National Player of the Year conversation because he is one of the best that this game has to offer, and I cannot wait to see what he can do in Big 12 play. BYU basketball will be back in action tomorrow night against former WCC foe Pacific. Nice to say former on that piece, right? Very nice. It again speaks to the glow-up that BYU basketball has experienced. Tried to tell yourselves a couple years ago, hey, get up for this BYU Pacific game. Look, they're a KenPom 140 team, top 150. It's a sneaky game. Now it's pre-Christmas game where it should be. The glow-up has been remarkable for BYU basketball, safe to say. That's going to do it for this edition of Cougar Tracks. I'll be back tomorrow. We'll have a Georgia Tech insider on the program tomorrow to get a lowdown on this Yellow Jackets team and a whole lot more here on Cougar Tracks, and it's powered by KSL Sports.